welcome back. I'm Ina, and I do art stuff and things when I can get a grip on my things. Now this is part 3 of the series where I show you how I created this portrait, and if you haven't seen part 1 and 2, I will link them somewhere. Those were about line work and background, and today we are painting skin. So let's get started. Let's turn on the lights and get to work. But first, a quick sneak peek behind the scenes at my setup. As you can see, it's a stand-up desk, because if I have an easy escape route, then I will overwork the painting far less than if I was sitting down. I use 2 cups for painting. The idea is to keep your cool colours and warm colours separated, but look at my palette. Do you think I ever achieve it? I don't. Here my white pan got so filthy that it muddied my first attempt at mixing the colour, so I had to go and run it under a cold tap. 2 brushes I will be using for this are number 10 and number 6 synthetic and firm brushes, because I like having control. I rarely do, but I like to. I will put the makes in the description below. What's happening here is that as a true beginner videographer, I somehow lost, if I ever recorded, footage of mixing the base colours. But not to worry, here is editing Ina to the rescue. This palette is Winsor Cotman. This is my first proper palette and I love it. I bought it because I like all the mixing space and one of my favourite artists uses it. However, in hindsight, I might have been better off with a more limited palette. There are just so many colours here, and I was like a deer in the headlights for quite some time.
Too much too soon!
So this reference card that I made is quite important, because although I know where all the colours that I use most often are, I have no idea what the rest are. So colours that I'm using to mix the base for the skin are yellow ochre, cadmium red pale, permanent rose, and Chinese white. A traditional watercolour artist will tell you that you should never use white in your mixes, and if you are planning on entering any watercolour competitions, do not use it. It will disqualify you.
They can tell that.
Well, yes they can. I believe that some galleries will use UV or some other kind of light to check. But I like white in my mix. It makes it a bit more pastel, so I'm using it. You want to dilute your base and also test it before applying to the face. The mix is a very fine balance and you want to play around with the amount of each colour to reach your desired tone. Filming this again without a portrait to paint gave me a chance to play around with the colours and to show you how easily this mix can be adjusted to your subject. For example, do they have olive skin undertones? Add more yellow. Are they a bit more flushed? Add more red. Do they have rosy undertones? Well, I think you figured it out by now. Hey, if you got this far into the video, it would be kind of cool if you gave it a big thumbs up, or just a regular thumbs up. I'm not fussy. It would really help out the channel, and it'll help others who would be interested in something like this find this video. You can use the same mix when painting darker skin tones. You just need to add in another colour, a darker one, something like burnt umber or raw umber. It will really depend on the skin tone of your subject. Skin tone differs so much from person to person, and even from photo to photo of the same person, so it's really all about observation and experimentation. And here I mixed shade first and also lost the footage. I felt that this reference shadows were of a reddish brown variety, so the mix was Indian red, burnt sienna, cadmium red pale, cadmium orange, and lamp black. I like dramatic shading. I'm not one for subtlety. My most common colours for shade are indigo, purple, or dark green, but it all really depends on the reference and the feels at the time. You're often told to work light to dark in watercolour, and you should. However, sometimes it's okay to start with shadows, which is what I did here, because I wanted to define the structure of the face straight away. This portrait has very pronounced sharp shadows, like those in the eye sockets, under the nose, lower half of the face. Those are easy, and some of them I already sketched out, so what you're basically doing at this point is colouring in. Ideally, you would want to lay this first shadow layer everywhere there are shadows, including lips and eyes, but as I'm painting those in a separate video, I'm going to let them be. And then you have some more subtle shadows, like the bridge of the nose and around the mouth. You want to apply this first layer as evenly as possible and aim for the lightest value of the shadow. This will be defined later on. Let's not forget the neck, because I often do. You will see that the base colour is very close to the shadows at this point, but remember, the shadows have now dried, and this base layer will also dry a lot lighter. I do try and leave the brightest areas unpainted, but often get carried away and not always succeed. I did manage to stop myself here somewhat. Next step is to add in warmth. If I was to start with the base, like a normal human being, I would add in warmth after that and before the shadows. I am using a mix of cadmium red and orange and adding it to the areas where warm light is reflecting or shining through, like the edges of deep shadows, tip of the nose, nostrils, and so on. And now that we warmed up the portrait, time to cool it right back down again. It doesn't really matter what cool colour you pick, depends on what you're seeing or imagining or what other colours you're using. For this portrait I thought that cerulean blue would do the trick, so I did add some white to tone it down a bit and added quite a bit of water. The way I was explained this was that the face exists in 3 dimensions, with all elements pointing or facing various directions, so by adding the cooler tone we're highlighting and tying together all the areas of the face that face in the same direction. Next step is defining and deepening the shadows. I'm switching to a smaller brush for this. I realised that I left out an area of warmth, so I'm going back in with cadmium red and orange, and then I'm continuing onto the shadows. Personally, I like a mix of blended smooth transitions and hard edges. You have to study your own reference and make your own decisions where you wish to blend and where you don't. For example, the shadow under the nose has a very crisp, hard edge, so I will not be blending it because it will look odd. However, the cheeks are blended, although you could get away with a hard edge here as a stylistic choice. As I'm working on the shadows, I noticed that there's quite a lot of warmth in them, so I add in more warm colours to make it a bit more pronounced. We are now in the awkward stage of the portrait, or scary, or ugly. Call it what you will, but Many times before I was close to tears at this stage because it looks awful, and I'm often convinced that I have ruined it. But not this time. I know now that this is just a stage that all portraits and other paintings as well go through. It is almost inevitable. And with my experience, I know where this is going, and I'm trusting the process. At this point, I like to darken my shadows, so I'm adding more black than in the earlier mixes. The order I usually work in is skin, brows, eyes, nose, lips, but I rotate what I work on, adjusting as I go, a bit here, a bit there, letting things dry, checking for the balance of all the elements, but it is far too chaotic and haphazard for a tutorial video, which is why I've broken it down. If you just gasped in horror, please do not worry. I know this looks crazy, but as I said before, there's a lot of warmth in the shadows and neck is completely in the shadow. This will be fine once I do the blendy and darken it. There's a collarbone dip here, so I'm defining it a bit, and then I'm going to bring in some coolness on the other side and let everything dry so that we could assess where to go next. I know this looks demented, but what are we gonna do? That's right, we're gonna trust the process. We need to darken the neck area, and that's what we're going to do. At this point, I'm no longer applying an even layer, but paying attention to the shade variations and trying to replicate those to create form and depth. I messed up there, but nothing. A wee bit of dab what sort. That's a great thing about watercolour. You can save pretty much anything. Back to the face now, and I'm just smoothing out some of the patchier areas, adjusting contrast in some of the smaller areas like under the nose and around corners of the mouth, and that is the face pretty much done. I'm adding more coolness to the chest area before almost putting down the brushes and calling it a day. Now all the elements of the skin have been completed, which are base layer, shadow layer. Sounds like where goblins live. I guess in a way that's where the self-doubt goblins live. The warmth, coolness and shadow detailing. So we need to stop before we overwork this, which is very easily done. Remember, once the features are painted in, and most importantly the hair, it will balance and offset the seemingly deranged look. And if it's still not working, we can adjust then. In the next video, we will be painting the features. As I'm trying to keep these videos fairly short, I'm not yet certain whether I can squeeze in all the features into one video or have to split it into two. So next week we'll tell. I will see you then, or in a minute if you're watching this from not so distant future where next video is already released. Thanks for watching. Bye!